Hey people, what's going on? It's going to be a little bit of an odd one today because I'm going to be working on some super analog stuff that I got to get done. And I thought, yeah, maybe it'd be nice to kind of come in and just talk about productivity, such as it is. Um, if you could let me know, because this is like a totally different setup than I'm normally working at, if the audio is okay and I sound like a human being, that would be super awesome. Uh, I think I should be able to track the chat. If not, I'm going to be super bummed out about that as well. But please just toss a couple things in the comments. Let me know what's going on. Let me know you're alive and out there and everything is happening the way that it should be. And I'm just going to kind of dive in and like get to work. So yeah, I don't know. Still waiting for those comments, folks. Get those fingers moving. Please let me know that everything's working the way it should. Otherwise, I'm going to have like 2 busted streams in a month. All right, Jim Sketch testing is saying sound is fine. Steve Koch has got the volume on. The drawing is stretched vertically. Yeah, so I'm working right now. You can't tell because the setup on screen is, I think, in a way, pretty nice. That actually this is like skewed. Like, so the drawing board is not flat like this. It's like, it's skewed like that. So this camera that's behind me here is coming in at like a 45-degree angle to the drawing. So that's why it looks like it's stretched vertically. Actually, what it is it's like in a depth perspective, right? So that's what you're seeing. Everybody's telling me the sound is all right, so that's awesome. Folks, I'll tell you what, I have got work to do. So if you're doing this cast with me on Patreon, then you know like exactly how long this one can take. I'm probably about 12 hours in, and I think I got things pretty much where I want them. So now I've got to like really, really get that final push and like tighten up the smaller forms and just get stuff to where it needs to be. So rather than doing another stream that was like a different subject, I thought I'd just dive into this one today. And you folks, if you have questions about that, that's great. If you have comments about this project on Patreon, then let me know. There is going to be on November 1st, right? I'm going to do a new lesson that is the second half of this one here. So all of the rendering, all of the value-based stuff, that's going to be November 1st on Patreon at the Atelier tier. So that's a $10 tier. Everybody will be available to watch it there. Right, that's all the housekeeping I got to do, thank goodness. Let me just briefly tell you all about last week. So, so last week I was supposed to do a live stream on Wednesday, and I had a topic chosen. I had all the stuff that I wanted to do. I felt like I was prepared, but in the 3 or 4 hours that were immediately preceding the live stream, I was attending a tax compliance seminar here in Norway. So it was an online thing, and I was listening to essentially tax bureaucrats talking about tax law and compliance for about 3 hours. Immediately before, I was supposed to be talking online about art and inspiration and all of like the wonderful, like deep things that we want to talk about. And surprise, surprise, those two activities did not blend well together. And I was actually saved by the fact that Photoshop, like my Photoshop program, just decided it didn't want to work the right way in that moment, so I had to cancel the stream. So that is the big, super interesting story for this. Now, a couple of people are asking about the pencils. Like, in my FAQs, actually, I always explain exactly what I do with my pencils because there's so much drawing time and I use so many like different ones that it's kind of hard to say like, oh, which pencil are you using in this moment? Like sometimes I even get that question, like people are emailing me like at minute 16:07 on this video, like what pencil are you using? The only real answer that I can give is that if I'm working in a dark area, it's going to be a softer pencil. If I'm working in a really light area, it's going to be a harder pencil. So aside from that, that's just kind of what it is. Scott Hebert, or Scott Hebert, if you give it the French pronunciation, is asking when the finish date for this one is. So this one, technically, you guys all need to get it finished by mid-November because there's going to be a group critique that you can submit your drawing for, but I'm going to do it once we've gotten through the entire drawing, right? So we're all going to be like wrapping our drawings up. You'll have also like gotten the whole video about me talking about rendering and all the cool, interesting stuff that you have to do when you're kind of rendering out a drawing. And then probably around November 15th, 16th, whatever, then there's going to be a due date for that. And then the live stream will come. I think it's like November 19th or something like that. But I'll put out all those dates in November as well. Jim Sketch Testing is saying, what's the best way to warm up when going back into a long drawing like this? All right, it's a cool question. And let me turn it around on all of you folks, right? I've never really felt like drawing was something I warmed up for. It was a theory or like a practice that I was introduced to in college, right? When I went through my, you know, first kind of nominal drawing education. Even though I don't necessarily credit my university experience for much about what I do now. But yeah, the idea was that you'd start with like these like warm-up drawings, like gesture drawings and things. Um, and that was like how you prepared for, I guess, like a longer drawing. I have to say I don't do anything that is a warm-up now for my work. It's more, yeah, I don't know. I just it's just not a feeling that I really like have about it. If you have a warm up that you feel like works, I'd love to hear about it. I genuinely I don't have one because it's really not a part of my practice at all. Um, yeah. So I'd rather hear it from you folks, like what you do to warm up. Sopan R is asking, on approximately what grade pencil do you go for in the block in, for the darkest dark, for the lay in, for the basic tone? I use the same pencil you recommend in the materials list. Yeah. What you'll find out when you watch part one of this, right, which came out October 1st, I talk about the pencils that I'm using in the initial stages, and actually I start out with a 4B, specifically because I want to indicate, I want to show actually what expedited drawing looks like. So like when I'm working on a piece and I have like a major deadline for it, I don't start with like a 4H and, you know, build up my value through the grades of lead and slowly but surely come to the darkest values. You kind of snap through them a little bit. And that's what I do in this drawing. So you're going to see me starting this out in that video with a 4B pencil. And then kind of, you know, once I get into here, then I'm going to use like harder grades of lead that'll help me get those more subtle tones. Let's see, Daniel Culver is asking, can your Atelier tier be joined anytime and still have mostly the same experience as those who joined earlier? So, cool question, and I'll explain this, the whole Atelier tier thing in brief, right? The Atelier tier, we start with the first barg and we go on through all the projects, and this is still in progress, through all the projects in a typical Atelier curriculum, or let's say specifically an Atelier curriculum that I like, right, that I recommend. The whole curriculum is designed so that you can go in at any point. It's supposed to be evergreen material that I'm making, and that's what the edits and refined cuts eventually show you, is that they take you through everything that happened. I'm recording it live because that's fun and exciting and it keeps people going. So if you're jumping in and you want to join the lives, I think that's great. And that's a feature certainly of how they're being released, but you can go through them at any point, which is also why it's so important, those group critique videos that I make, right? So when you're going through your project, you're going to feel like, oh, like I don't have a community going along with me, and it's, you know, challenging to stay focused, like, or to know like where my work is at or what I'm supposed to be doing with it. Well, go through the group critique, right? In some cases, I've done 2 group critiques, right? One midway and one at the end. And so you can kind of measure your progress against those group critiques and kind of use that to help keep your momentum going as well. Let's see, MJ Artwork is asking, what do you mean when you say impression? So what MJ is talking about here is a lot of times you'll hear me talk about or refer to the visual impression, right? Now this is kind of two-word catch-all that was used at the academy where I studied. And basically, what we're talking about is like, it's setting up a dichotomy, right, between what something is and what something looks like. Now, if you wanted like two artists to use to kind of find the boundaries of those two things, like what something is and what something appears like, you can think of Velasquez versus Ribera. With Velasquez, it's all about how the light hits your eye, right? What does the room look like, right? And that's like his kind of, process, or his, let's say mission statement in terms of representation. It's very much about how things look to him. And other artists followed that. Sargent certainly followed that. Duran followed that. You could even say like a lot of the Impressionist painters of the 19th century and the 20th century also followed this idea of how does the light hit your eye and what is the appearance of the subject, rather than like, let's say, Renaissance artists would have been much more concerned with what is the physical structural makeup of the subject, right? So it's trying basically to set up that dichotomy, and it's easiest to understand impression when you also understand like, structural abstraction. Maybe those would be the two ends of the spectrum to talk about. Let's see. Yeah, Backman Linda is saying taxes and art, no wonder it doesn't mix. People, I was hurting. I was really hurting. I had like reams of like tax law, like drifting through my mind as I'm trying to like talk about figure drawing and why it's important. Which, by the way, let me say that live stream's coming back. I am going to do a Why Figure Drawing Matters live stream. I've been reconfiguring my notes and kind of refocusing. But I also realized something like that I do in my personality, right? Is I kind of get really excited about something and I'm not always sure of like how, what's the word? Like how much of it I can afford. Like, so I think that those live streams where really I'm just talking about, bullet points and a list and really almost like making a lecture, rather than like a live stream where like now where I'm like chatting and doing whatever. I think those are great, and I fully intend to do those because I think it's good content. I think it answers a lot of, a lot of things that people are quite interested in a way that kind of suits me as well. But I can't do them every week. I think that was a massive overcommitment, to think that I could do live streams like that every week. I think it's going to be, every other week, or it's going to be really whenever I have all the notes and the time to actually focus. Like even today, it was crazy to like get here and get everything ready to actually just do a live stream. I know it seems like it should be super simple, but actually, I don't know. Maybe it's that I'm like 40 and like life comes at me pretty fast. But it's tough sometimes. Let's see. Vijay Kumar says, every few months I find myself going back to basic shapes, concept sphere, basic geometric shapes, etc. I feel like going back instead of moving forward. And he says, Vijay also says, I'm on intermediate bargs now, by the way. I want to move forward to cast or advanced bargs, but I keep going back. I get it, Vijay. I mean, it's kind of it can feel like you're a little bit on a hamster wheel, but that's just because you're not zoomed out far enough. Like when you look back on your progress and you think about it more, what happened over a year, it's going to look a little bit different. Learning this stuff is, frankly, in comparison to how fast we're used to things happening nowadays, learning to draw is a comparatively incredibly slow process. But think about it this way. If you, instead of, comparing it to things that can get done quickly, if you compared it to like learning a language, probably you'd understand that you're working at just about the right rate in a sense. Languages don't get learned fast. It takes a long time to process and internalize what you're learning. So I think if you adjust your expectations, I think it's going to look a lot different to you. So that is my my advice is maybe just try to put on a different set of goggles when you're looking at this and try to understand. It's a long and deep process, not a like a fast and shallow one. You know, as social media would have us believe. Let's see. Otto Shoeblades says, "Hi Stephen, name three artists you'd like to, wow, that's crazy. Three artists that I'd like to be compared to." All right, people, this is going to get into dangerous territory, and that is the artist's ego. Of course, I have a massive one because I think sometimes it's actually like a little bit helpful to have, you know, some sense of ego. Like I always did really and truly like want to be the best at this, you know, and I know I'm not. Like I know that's not really. I don't even know if we really live in a world where you know there's somebody that is like the best. Um, but you know, in my in my childish dream of this, like yeah, like of course I'd want to be absolutely the best at doing this, and I think that's something that's like if you shoot for the moon, you know you might hit one of the stars or whatever it is, you know that kind of situation. So when you think about like artists that I'd like to be compared to, I'm gonna say things that are gonna sound crazy. But all right, let's do like a realistic one first. When you say all right, when you say would like to be compared to, I think that you mean like that I would like people to like look at my work and think, oh, you know, this is comparable to, you know, this person or whatever, um, rather than like comparisons that would be favorable to me, like artists that are not as good as I am that maybe look really good. Um, so I'm gonna say I would like to be compared to Solomon J. Solomon because I believe that as far as draftsmanship is concerned, he is one of the all-time greats in terms of just a fantastic sense of design, clarity of execution. Um, yeah, I think Solomon J. Solomon would be a great one. Um, but that's all I have for now. I think I'll have to pause and think about you know what the others are. By the way, before I kind of go too deep into it. FYI, just so you know, like what I'm getting into now, like you're gonna start looking at these shadow edges through here, right? And you see these kind of punctuated shadow edges where the darkness is kind of concentrated along that edge, and it kind of sets up like a crystal clear dichotomy between light and shadow. That's where the drawing has to go right now. So all these shadow edges through here are starting to get like super specific in their shape, and that's going to happen really everywhere. I'm going to punch out that light shape. Let's see. Link is asking, and I think Link, this is a reference to Zelda, which you know, cheers to you for that. What do you think about drawing with two hands? Do you think it could be beneficial? Um, at the same time, I think I saw there's a guy on Instagram called Matthew. Oh, his last name is long in French, and I don't remember it exactly, but I think he did a quick video about like drawing simultaneously with two hands. Uh, I don't know of what practical benefit that could really be. Um, Probably because I don't have like the manual dexterity in both hands to be able to maybe get to a place that um, that would make that useful. But I guess if you could draw with both hands, why wouldn't that be useful? Provided both hands had the same, as I said, like kind of manual dexterity. So I just got to get some of this little erasure like happening in here, some little shapes to kind of pull out. Emmanuel Alou says, I regret not listening to you. I'm doing St. Andrew with graphite on toned paper and it's very awkward. Yeah, he's referring to an advice I gave him about toning the paper with ink versus toning the paper with like graphite or charcoal powder. Now, of course, the charcoal powder is going to be more difficult to negotiate in terms of like the addition of white chalk So not really the best idea for this project. It can be done, but it's just you're upping the level of difficulty on yourself. I think kind of slightly unnecessarily. But hey, you know what? That is how you learn stuff. You try it out, and now you know. That's what we call empiricism, right? You did the work, you tried it out for yourself, and who knows? You may have found out that there were some things about it that you really liked. It's not always about finding out things that are a bummer. Sometimes you experiment and everything works the way that you thought it would, and then you have a new asset to work into all of your projects. So yeah, don't be too bummed about it, because it's just it's part of growth. It's part of figuring stuff out. Let's see. Daniel Culver is asking, that resonates with me. It took me about 2 to 3 months just to teach myself to center clay on a pottery wheel. Man, I would love to actually learn to throw pots. I think that, it looks like probably the closest place that I could come to meditation. Like I'm a very like kinetic person, and I need to be doing stuff while I'm doing stuff, so like the idea of meditating by literally just sitting still, I think is a non-starter for me. But like there's activities that are more meditative, and I think like throwing pots would be one of them. But I gotta put my money where my mouth is there, and like I have an in-law of mine, like my wife's aunt is a ceramic artist, lives in the same town as us, and has a studio, and I have not bothered her about teaching me how to throw pots. So that one is 100% on me, but I would love, love, love to do it. Let's see. Kylo77 says, Stephen, what do you think about Chinese artists? Apparently their colleges are a lot more like ateliers, and kids start learning from a very young age. Hey, this is another cool thing. Like, I've talked before about the kind of East-West divide in terms of, what happened in the mid 20th century, that in the West we were calling the twilight of painting. I think that as far as I can tell, in Russia and in China, they had a little bit less instance of that, of modernism completely blotting out the sun in terms of like interest in art training, and so as a result, I feel like their techniques over there, have more of a I feel like maybe they're a little bit more thorough than ateliers here in the West. This is just the impression that I get. I didn't study there, so I can't really say. But I say this because a lot of the learning I felt like I had to do after I went to an atelier in Florence, in Italy, had to do with stuff that I think that they do actually at a lot of Russian schools, and as far as I can see in the work, also in a lot of Chinese schools. So this kind of structural approach that I take now, again, I wouldn't credit that to what I learned at a Western atelier. Though, by the way, like, it's not that it wasn't there. I think it got kind of bottled up, I guess, or it got anyway, it got hidden from from your average curriculum, and so it was kind of a lost, in a way, a little bit of like a lost knowledge, that nowadays I think is probably coming back a little bit more. Let's see, Mundiari, Mundrai. Wow, that's a tough one. But Mundirai says, "Hi, hello, Stephen. Nice to meet you. I'm happy to join your classes recently. That's awesome." Jack Daly is saying, "Have you seen the works of a portrait artist called William Orpen?" I feel like I have, but it doesn't bring anything to mind off the top of my head. Jazz W is saying, Solomon J. Solomon, never heard of him. Then you are in for a treat. Madeline Pater says, what would you regard as a good starting point for learning the skill of self-critiquing one's own work? Well, when you're self-critiquing, it's all about criteria. So I think that starting out with some clear criteria for judgment, right? Which is to say, like when I'm looking at a drawing, the first things that I tend to look at are the proportion, right? Height to width, does that work? The shape of the features in relationship to each other, the overall set of widths. Proportion is a great starting point for like self-analysis, right? Because in some ways it's also very objective. Um, so you don't have to like values can be more subjective, say than proportion is, because they involve a kind of interpretation, whereas proportion, as I said, is a little bit more just related to the innate subject itself, right? Um, so that's one like kind of question that you can start out with is, are the proportions correct? Um, and critiquing with that basis just continues along similar lines. So you start to ask yourself, well, what about the gesture? What about the construction? What about whatever all these different categories are that we use for analysis of the quality of a work. Now, just like drawing, you're gonna get better at self-critiquing as you go. So I mean, you have to kind of just start somewhere, I guess. But it just starts with asking the right questions. The better you get at answering those questions, I think the more you'll get out of that self critique. And then also you'll advance and you'll start asking, other questions. But we gotta start somewhere. That's one of those things where it's like probably if you start asking yourself some really like advanced questions, maybe you don't really have the answer for them. That's not a bad thing. It's not to say you shouldn't do it. It's just yeah, starting with the basics is always kind of always a good idea. Let's see. Daniel Morris says, when you first went to the Florence Academy, what one very new concept about drawing was completely unexpected until that point in your life, but has profoundly impacted your view of making art? I would say probably everything. I hate to give that answer, but the reality is, I knew literally nothing. I knew less than nothing about drawing when I arrived at the academy. Um, I would have almost said that like drawing is just something that, I don't know, like you just practice and then that's how you get good. I mean, I literally, I just had no sense of reference. It's really only down to the wisdom of a friend of mine that I even wound up at the Florence Academy, because I didn't even know about this like tradition of drawing. So from top to bottom, literally everything that I discovered was, something that kind of profoundly shaped me. Now, what it's made me realize, of course, in retrospect, is that there's a lot of us that grew up either in a part of the world or with a set of influences or whatever, where we didn't have. I mean, I grew up in Miami, right? Like, as far as the history of Western representational art is concerned, it was just 7-Elevens and, and supermarkets or whatever. Like, Miami doesn't have a really rich history in that respect. Um, and so it just never was something that I even encountered. To like even know that you could learn to draw that way was like a shock to me. So let's then like satisfy the question with one at least decent thing that came up. I think that one of the first things that really shocked me was the idea of measurement. I know, like, right, like it shouldn't shock you, like you should know these things. Well, I didn't know at all. And so this idea that I could like take a plumb line and like, measure these proportions on a model and then kind of compare them to my drawing, that was like, I was like that emoji with the head that's, or the top of his head that's popped off, um, that was kind of how it felt. But I mean, it was such an intense experience too, because I was in Florence, Italy, and it's just such an amazing city, and it's like just nothing like where I'd come from. And I mean, it was, there was so much like vital new stuff happening To me, it was like everything was kind of every day was like an eye-opening experience. So, sometimes in a tough way, sometimes in a really really awesome way. Oh, JD Anarchy is saying Carl Kopinski draws with both hands. I haven't seen it, but I imagine if he's doing it, he's pretty good at it. Vitors says, "Hey, how would you compare GCA to FAA or Barcelona?" I would compare them by saying first, I would compare them by saying that I did not study at GCA, nor did I study at BAA. I studied at FA and taught there for a long time, but at the same time, I've also left there a couple of years ago. So, things grow and things change, and I don't want to, you know, define one of these places or any of these places by like just whatever my opinion is. But having said all that as like a preface to my thoughts on this, I think that GCA has an approach which suits you very well to do a lot of like three-dimensional kind of rendering and modeling of form, and that seems to be a really strong focus in their academic work. Then I would say that at the Florence Academy and therefore likely at BAA, and by the way, correct me if I'm wrong about this because again, I did not study at BAA, that they would be coming from a place where two-dimensional design, like flat shape design, is a lot more the central focus of their curriculum and their kind of philosophy. So neither one is like totally without the other. It's not like a black and white issue. But in my view, that is the specialization that occurs in between both places. If you know me, then you understand like my feelings are generally a search for a kind of truth that's a bit independent uh, of any kind of dogma or whatever. So I think that both of them have like a really interesting part of the story to tell, and you would be well placed to learn the best parts of what each of them has to offer, because they both or all three have for sure like interesting stuff to say, but alone, like on their own, I'm not sure that any of them has the whole story. I mean, that would be I don't think that anybody has really the whole story, So, um, yeah, I guess that's my opinion. Let's see. Victor is saying, where would you go to study today if you were beginning in art? I go to GCA, or alternatively, I go to Lime Academy. Let's see. Art A says, I watched your materials video, but I'm not 100% clear. I will be mixing Pentel's point 3, point 5 with Stadler wood pencils. This is a bad idea. Pentel lead is easy to find and buy. Suggestions. If you look at my hand here, and you look at this and all the other pencils that I have hanging around, I'm always mixing stuff. Hang on. Oh man, hang on, folks. I managed to like tilt my camera around. All right, here we go. Are we back? Is everything cool? Did the stream like knock out or anything? Um, yeah, so yeah, you're gonna mix together all those pencils. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that whatsoever at all. Um, in fact, yeah, like for sure, that's how it works. So you'll see me mixing those things all the time. It's a little bit too about preference. Some people, maybe you totally hate wood pencils, and like that's okay. Or maybe you hate mechanical pencils. You just want to like feel the kind of raw wooden pencil in your hand. Totally cool. No need to ever draw with a mechanical pencil if you don't want to. Um, it's why I've got so much gear is that, I mean, at a certain point, I just kind of react to what I feel like working with. And it's not like stuck inside one or the other. I kind of do whatever I want. Or at least it's the idea that I work with. Right, let's see. Emmanuel Alou says, how much will the figure drawing course be that you're setting up? When will it come, since you're also doing Atelier QA as well? Deep breath. Deep breath. I don't know. I mean, this is why I can't kind of say, because I have a lot of projects like going on. As soon as I have a date and a number, like, I'll put it out there. But I honestly, at the moment, I've got nothing to update about it, just because a whirlwind of things has like kind of spun into view, and I've just got to take care of those. I can't prep that class with all the other stuff I'm doing right now as well. So don't know. But it'll listen, it's in the works. Let's see. Mundirai says, started watching the series Drawing Fundamentals Part 1. Great series. That and Part 2 will set you up to do most of the projects on my site. Michaela's asking if I usually finish my drawings in one sitting. Just funny that you mentioned that while I'm working on this one, because not at all do I finish them in one sitting. It's always a couple sittings. I mean, you'll see sometimes, like, the colored pencil drawings that I do, I'll finish those a bit faster. Sometimes it takes 2 sittings though, just to get like a fresh eye on it, and to not get stuck in your first kind of impression. So I almost always take quite a while to finish. Like, this drawing has been multiple sittings. Like, I need to get to the last sitting. That's what I need to actually do. Let's see. Fro PL says, Carl Kopinski actually uses primary hand for the marker or ink pen, and secondary hand for a blender marker. Okay, so, well, but you could still say that that's drawing with both hands, isn't it? Credit where it's due. I think that if you're using that second hand for something, then, I mean, I'm just sitting here, I just got like my Wolverine claw, in in my second hand. So not an active part of my drawing process at all. This is, by the way, like what I'm doing right now. This is the really, if you ever think about, drawing as being meditative, probably this is the meditative part, because it's just getting these transitions, these little gradations to work perfectly. It's like there's nothing in them but the right gradient, the right shape, the right value, the right tone, the right evenness, the right turn. It takes a really long time if you're going to get a lot of refinement in that. And there's other ways to draw, by the way. Let's see. Jim Sketch Testing says, when drawing proportions, how much do you rely on precise measuring and how much on the intuitive by eye appearance? It's been different at different stages. I think when I was a student, I relied a lot more on measuring. And I think that's, I would say that's a kind of a reasonable advice or expectation that you folks out there can have. You'll probably need to measure more than I need to measure at this point. I'm not without my needs, and I'm certainly not without mistakes in drawing. Let me tell you, I make my fair share of errors when drawing. But usually, I'm able to get to a place of correction or objective accuracy without a whole lot of measuring. You'll probably find the need for just a little bit more, and that's totally okay. So, to answer your question, I probably rely a little bit more on the intuitive by eye thing. But, understand, intuitive measuring, right, or intuitive like adjustments for accuracy, they rely on the eye, yeah, but it's one hand washing the other. The other hand is the process, right? If you have a good procedural kind of layout of how your drawing is going to look at each stage, it really, really assists your eyes in making those naive measurements. So it's not just that, like, I could walk into a drawing and smudge everything on a paper and all of a sudden my eye is going to like pick out, perfect proportions. it's walking hand in hand with a drawing process that is suited or orchestrated to reveal also exactly the kinds of inaccuracies that I'm looking for. So I rely a lot on that, and I think that's why also, FYI for students out there, what are you doing when you're learning? Is you're plotting out a process, a repeatable process that is going to allow you to engage with your subjects and get better, to practice them over and over and over and improve, get stronger, get faster, get clearer, or a clearer grasp on what you're doing. You're here to build a process, right? And that process can be viewed as something which is made of many different components, right? I was taught one process at the academy, with its set of recommendations, kind of plugged into it, and I realized there was other things I wanted, other things I wanted to put into that process that came from different places. So for me, like, building my process was a long and kind of baroque educational experience. But it got me to where I am now, where I feel like I'm really in control of my drawing. If I make errors, I know why I made the error, and I'm well equipped to fix it. And when things go right, also I know why that happened. I'm not like, shocked or whatever at how things happen. I don't tend to get lucky when I'm drawing. It's because I did the stuff I knew I was supposed to do, and I did it the right way. I guess into everybody's life a little bit of rain has to fall. So, like I said before, I'm far from perfect, but that part of it is not anymore like a roll of the dice. Let's see. Daniel Morris is saying, what would be the difference between a bar drawing in 10 to 15 hours versus one done in 50 plus hours? Is there really a big difference there? Some schools I hear go for 50 plus hours on it. Yeah, no, there of course there's going to be a difference. Naturally, when you spend 50 plus hours on a project, here's one of the things that's going to happen. And this is a phenomenon that happens at schools that I don't really think anybody really recognizes or even really wants to talk about, for that matter. But here's the thing, right? If you're at one of these ateliers, you're going to be getting, certainly like if you went to a school where I was, you're going to be getting 2 critiques a day, one on each project that you're doing. So one in the model room and the one in your individual studio. And you're getting that 5 days a week, for 11 weeks out of the year. So if you're like working on a project for, say, like 50 plus hours, you have to think about how many critiques, like how many nudges in the right direction you've kind of gotten. If you work on a project for like 50 plus hours, there's probably as much of the teachers in it as there is like the student. Now the student has to do the work. And I want to give massive credit, all the credit in the world, to the students who really put their time in. I'm saying this because I know from when I was a student, my work, right? I did one drawing that took me, honestly, it was about 13 weeks. So it was 75 hours plus, like plus. By the time I finished that drawing, anybody could have spent that much time in front of that piece of paper and come up with a drawing that was comparable, just given like all the critiques I got, all the nudges I got, all the help I got, all the time that I took. So one of the differences is that you get a little bit more of a kind of like standing on the shoulders of your teachers a little bit, to get you just that little bit higher, kind of over the edge. And it's great for students to do that. Again, this is not a takedown. This is just explaining like what happens when you're doing that. The other thing, probably the main difference that you get is you get closer to kind of a millimeter to millimeter accuracy, which does have its own kind of objective value. But for me, I feel like it's the kind of thing where people spent a lot of time trying to get to that objective accuracy. But I'm not sure that like that objective accuracy was a lesson that continues to pay back as time goes on. It's maybe just like achieving a good mark, and maybe it gives you a little bit of a sense of confidence. But that confidence fades. Like I think that a lot of faster projects kind of for instance, like in the model room, we would take 75 hours for a long pose. I think instead of that, if you took, whatever, several, whatever, 12-hour poses, I think that the gross understanding of what was going on would increase, because you would have kind of repeated that process quite a few more times than with the 75 hours. It's like when you think about that 75 hours on a long pose, what that means essentially is that in a 33-week school year, that you would do six. No, wait, no, that's wrong. You would do, let's see, yeah, two. Yeah, basically, in a 33-week school year, you would do six figurative projects, six figure paintings. And each one would be 75 hours. To me, you can spend that time a little bit differently. That's what I think. Let's see. Yeah, MJ is asking if do you secretly think of yourself as a sculptor while you're drawing? I not so secretly think of myself as a sculptor anyway. Like I'm a sculptor trapped in a painter's body or whatever it is. Um, so yeah, absolutely, absolutely, I am. I think that for me, form is always such a major motivation. Um, I always wanted to see that better, understand that better, illustrate that better. And then when I started sculpting, I kind of realized like, oh, this is all that stuff I wanted to do, that I wanted to do in my 2D world. Here's where it really has its kind of outlet. So of course when I'm kind of drawing and painting, form is at the center of my thinking, and I've said it before probably a million times. In another life, if I had another life just to master something, I would have definitely been a sculptor for sure. Let's see. Robot Ron says, I'm guessing you're using a harder pencil for this stage. Depends. If I'm getting into those shadow edges, then I'm using softer pencils. So this is going to be like a 2B. So as I'm getting into little holes in the paper and these shadows and I'm trying to unify things and stuff, that's going to be softer leads. And when you see me like working in areas like this and stuff, probably I'm going to be using a bit of a softer lead. You can actually see a huge secret revealed. There's a color code to my pencils, right? So if you have like this, if you have this 0.3 millimeter pencil here, you got a pink top and a red top, and that's how I understand like the pink top is 2B and the red top is 2H. Let's see. JD Anarchy says, no, he is drawing with both hands. I just watched him, a video of him doing it. I think he's talking about Karl Kopinski here. Art A says, local drawing meets with live models include very short poses, 5, 10, 20 minutes. Is this useless to the type of drawing we're trying to learn here? How would you use this time? I think that, hey, gesture drawing is a thing. It's a thing that people do, and there is something in it, for sure. No reason to say that it's useless. Not even for what I'm doing. I'm a big believer in like kind of cross pollination anyway, so I kind of feel like, you know, experiencing that, drawing in that paradigm, trying that out. Inevitably, you're gonna find something in that that's going to be suited to you. It's more like that thing I've talked about before, where it's like when you're working with some kind of unknown idea, or a teacher presents you with a concept that you're totally unfamiliar with, you're gonna get the most out of it if you meditate on how does this work, like how is this useful, rather than how is this not useful. So if I think about what gesture drawing can give you, I think you can work with like a dynamic pose. You can search for like how to show like movement, and what those kind of long generic lines can give you in terms of like a sense of like flow and movement in a drawing, and that definitely can be applied to drawings that take like a lot longer to actually make. Also because like, structural gestural design like that is definitely a part of the human body and the human experience. So for sure, study power and movement and gesture in those. I think that's how you're going to get the most out of it. Let's see. Jad Ardat Art says, I totally agree. Once I begin rendering stage, I could spend days on end working on an area just for meditation. Yeah, and it's, you know what? It's the healthy way to look at it, because otherwise you're going to totally go bonkers. I think I told this story before, but I remember there was a Swedish friend of mine at school who was working on one of his cast projects at the beginning studio, and he was like pointing out to me like how he gets like the even value that he got. And he said like he brings his kneaded eraser down to this point, and he goes through and like picks out like the little dark bits, the little like specks of charcoal that were a little bit too dark, right? Until like he got this kind of uniform look. And I remember hearing it and going like, nah, that ain't me. Like I'm not, that is not going to be drawing for me. That sounds way too tedious. No, I'm definitely not going to do it. Years later, here I am doing it. So, it goes to show that what may seem a little bit crazy to you now, like once you adjust to the activity that you're actually in, it may become totally normal to you. Let's see. Tom Haskins is asking, how do you pick your tone of paper? Is this so you don't need chalk on the lightest darks? I picked a tone. So, wait, where's my white chalk? Hang on. I need my white chalk for this. Yes, here we go. So I picked the tone of this paper, right? So, by the way, I didn't pick the tone. I made the tone. I toned it with ink. If you're on my Patreon, there's a stretching and toning video exactly about how I go about doing this. I talk about this as well, like what kind of value I choose for it. But I wanted something where the white chalk would come off of it really well. Like you can see the contrast really clearly here. But not that I need to like fill all of the light with white chalk. I wanted areas that were going to be just graphite. I wanted areas that there was going to be no chalk. I wanted areas where I could dramatically kind of bring out just a whisper of white chalk to kind of bring that area into focus. So I did that. I think can you see actually down here in the right hand corner? No, you can't. I have a little tester of of white chalk down here at the bottom that I did during the toning process, just so I could understand like where I was at in terms of the overall kind of lightness of or darkness of value of the of the paper. So you always got to test. You always got to get your white chalk out. Also because some white chalks are going to be different. Some are not going to get like quite as light as others. So you might be working with a white chalk that has like a lower ceiling of overall lightness. You kind of need to know that as you're preparing your paper. Super important stuff. Let's see. Backman Linda says, yeah, she was looking up Solomon J. Solomon, British artist, active in the 19th century and early 20th. Let's see. Devin Cobos Garcia says, how many hours have you put into this drawing so far? I think that the first section that I did, right, the first part of the lesson was about 3 hours worth of drawing. So the block in was about 3 hours. Again, all of that is on my Patreon. If you're interested, that's where it is. And then the next part of it, which is kind of everything after, has been probably about 7 hours. We're getting 7 hours, 8 hours, maybe 9 hours. We're getting close to like a dozen hours on the drawing overall, which in retrospect, I try to give students like an estimate of like how long they should be spending on these, and I think I said like 25 to 35 hours on this one or something. It could easily be more than that. I just try to set those numbers a little bit low, partially because I think You don't want to go into it thinking like I'm gonna spend 100 hours on this drawing. You could spend 100 hours on it, but I do feel like here's the thing, like we're gonna come up against moments where our ability to see more has been maxed out, right? And it is related to your skill level. You know, the better you get at doing this stuff, the more you're going to be able to see, the longer you're going to be able to extend your drawing, the more you're going to be able to soak out of the subject matter that you're looking at. Um, but like for remote students, sometimes you're going to max out like quite a bit lower. Also because you're not getting critiques literally like every single day on your work from your instructors. So I think setting it like 25 to 35 is probably pretty realistic to try and get a good drawing that also just doesn't push past your ability to like assess at this time. Even for like advanced people doing advanced drawings that have studied quite a lot. Again, like forget about studying. I've been teaching this stuff for like almost 15 years. So you can just use that as kind of a measure to maybe gauge your time a little bit and how much you can kind of pour into this. Because what I don't like for students to do is actually to spend so long that like the the project becomes like a noose, you know, like or let's say rather like a what is it that oxen wear when they're like pulling a um, why am I getting to like farming metaphors? Whatever the point is, like I don't want it to be like a burden that like stops you, that creates like a disincentive for you to work. Because the only way that you're gonna get any better at this stuff is to work. And so I feel like we need to keep positive. You need to stay encouraged if you're actually gonna put your nose to the grindstone and like really get stuff done. It's not gonna come out of a person who's like totally discouraged and like wanting to throw their drawing in the trash. You know, you got to stay motivated. A lot of times, stay self motivated. Yeah. Anyway, by the way, YouTube stuff, please smash that like button. It will really help me to get this video out to more people on YouTube. Let YouTube know that maybe something remotely interesting is going on here. Pretty please just smash that like button, and if you're not subscribed, you can go ahead and subscribe if you want to, but it would be a big help to me and cost nothing to you. Let's see. Robot Ron says, do you think it's good to actually know how many hours you've spent on a piece? Because I'm almost never really sure. It's only something that comes up, honestly, in like live streams. I only kind of know about it because whenever I'm doing this stuff, I've got this camera back here and it's recording and I'm transferring data and I'm like, putting that into video editing software. So the numbers are just something that I come across. I never really think to myself, like when I'm working on a painting, I don't know if you can see back here, there's one of my more artistic paintings. I never really think I couldn't tell you even within a dozen hours like how long I've spent. I have no idea how long I've spent on that, just because it's kind of not really my priority. My priority is to get a quality drawing done, and that can take a long time. It can take sometimes a shorter time. I just want to get it right. So yeah, it's an interesting. By the way, I know why people ask, because it's kind of interesting to know, like, oh, like what does the yeah, like how long would it take if you're good at drawing or relatively good at drawing? Like how would it take to get something done? It's a natural question. I have that question when I look at people's work. I'm like, wow, I wonder how long it took this person to do this thing or whatever. So there's nothing wrong with the question, but again, it literally doesn't occur to me in most situations. I only know because the cameras are rolling, and my 300 megabytes per second, or megabits? Is it megabits or megabytes? Anyway, whatever. 300 Mbps video cards record, what is it, 2 hours and 52 minutes at full 4K resolution. So I know each time I fill up a card, I've got about 2 hours and 55 minutes. Like nobody wanted to know about that. Let's see. Seema Vishwakarma is asking, why don't you post a tutorial? In fact, I do all of that and more on Patreon. So if you follow the link in the description here, you'll go to my Patreon page. Sign up at $10, you get like whatever 400 hours worth of tutorials. Devin Garcia is saying, do you recommend using only 2H, H, and HB pencils when starting out as a new artist? When should you change your range? No, I think you should always. I think you should always have all the available tools. Like, I've talked about this before, but there's like, some teachers out there that in an effort to like simplify the learning process for some students, they'll just say, we're only going to use like B pencils or HB pencils or whatever, and that's it. That way you don't have to think about what pencil to use and wonder about what pencil to use. But I feel like, nah, like each one has its purpose. So like, why would you train not using them? I feel like we should use them. So if you're making a dark value, get out your 4B. If you're making a light value, get out your 4H. I think that's just the nature of the process, and then you should follow what the drawing needs. If the drawing needs a dark value, you got to get out that soft pencil. Let's see here. Marcelo Serrato says, congratulations, where can you buy that plaster head? Hey, in the FAQs on my Patreon page, there's a link both for a European and a US shop where you can buy plaster casts. So go to the FAQs on my Patreon page. It's a free post. Don't need to pay to get that info. Let's see. Emmanuel Alou says, what about 30K celebration and a special live stream episode? Yeah, so my YouTube channel just hit 30K, which is great. Thank you everybody, by the way, that's like subscribed and like been here for a stream or like stop by and ask the question. It's really great. And by the way, the thing is, like, I actually really want to be on YouTube because, and if I would have known this, right, for all of you artists out there, you're thinking, I want to get into the arts, I want to get into social media, I want to do all this stuff, right? I started out on Instagram because somebody at the school I worked at was like, hey, you should like check out Instagram. So I made an account and I was like, oh, what is it? This is a thing. Whatever, like 7 years later or something, I have a really big audience on Instagram. Here's the thing. Instagram is a fast platform, 60 seconds or less. And in those videos, the first 3 seconds is what people actually watch. YouTube, though it has similar metrics, is actually made for really long form content. So this is why I'm doing these live streams all the time, is I actually want to be on YouTube. I think that's where the audience that wants to watch the stuff that I make actually is. So subscribing here is a massive help to me, so that I can like basically transfer a lot of my efforts to making longer form YouTube videos instead of like shorter form Instagram content. Now, I'll always be on Instagram. I mean, everybody I know is on Instagram. We're all friends and we follow each other and stuff. But like I said, I think, I'm making a kind of conscious effort to go more on YouTube. And if you're out there thinking to yourself, I want to get into this professional world and I want to start doing this or putting effort into social media, if you're making stuff like this, my honest advice would be that YouTube would be a place where if you invest your time in that platform, I think it sets you up a little bit better than some other platforms. That's just my opinion, based on the experience I had, kind of like I said, starting out on Instagram rather than YouTube. If I could go back in time all those years, it would be a platform that was much more conducive to the kind of work that I make. Let's see. Shaz is asking, is comparative measurement more advanced than site size? No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I wonder actually. Yeah, actually, I'm curious. I guess where does the question come from? Like, what did you hear or see or read or whatever that made you think of that? Because maybe you have a good reason for it. I just don't know what it is. But to me, I've done site size, and I've done comparative, and though I use comparative probably a lot more, definitely a lot more nowadays. I don't think it's because it's more complex than site size. It's just that it aligns more with my drawing philosophy at present, and the kinds of drawings and artwork that I want to make revolve more around or necessitate a little bit more a different kind of observation than what you have with site size. But not because it's like definitely not like a better worse thing at all. A lot of it's funny. You find out on social media like a lot of people bag on site size, like, oh, site size, pff, that's crazy. Why would you do that? It's nothing good about site size. And I just think it's like there's this weird chauvinism about art practices, where everybody kind of seems to feel like in order for what the thing that they do to be cool enough, like nothing else can be cool. And I'm not making a straw man here. I'm telling you, like, this is how people talk about stuff is they kind of need to like denounce the other side in order to like talk about how cool their side is. I never really had that feeling. I think both are cool and kind of interesting. But what you got to look at is, what are the needs of the work that you're making, you know? If you're like a professional portrait artist, guess what? Site size is pretty good. Like it'll get you really fast to the place that you want to be. And once you're good at doing it, like it's actually, like I said, it's really rapid and pretty, pretty. I want to say like efficient. I mean, I know that I don't use that as being synonymous with rapid. I mean, you can be fast and bad, but I feel like site size for professional portrait artists can be both rapid and quite efficient. Let's see. Yeah, Mr. Anonymous is saying it's bytes, so it's a megabytes per second. Let's see. Gilgamesh says, Stephen, please be sincere with me. Am I savage for. Hang on a second. Am I savage for using an 8B for shadows? You might be savage anyway. But but using 8B for shadows is totally acceptable. I've got somewhere over here. This is the one. This is the one. This is my go-to when I need to get dark. I get that 6B out. And that's what I'm using for like a lot of this stuff. In the background here, I'm just picking away and picking away and picking away, and eventually you get to that place that looks like a pretty good kind of zero black. By the way, hey, whoa, hey, I just thought of something. So everybody knows Bridgman. I know Bridgman. Bridgman has a portraiture book, and I'm doing a kind of page by page analysis of his advice about portraiture. Now, I have the first episode recorded, edited, in the can, ready to roll, but I've been trying to think about how to release it. Here's what I'm actually thinking. I'm actually thinking that I'm not going to do it as like a monthly Patreon thing. I'm going to do it as like special like Patreon offers, like special Patreon kind of download offers, right? So coming up pretty soon, I'm going to release this first episode of the Bridgman project that I'm doing as a special offer for Patreon subscribers only, right? So if you're subscribed, you're going to get that download link and all the stuff that kind of comes along with it. So keep your eyes out. If you think Bridgman's pretty cool, you like constructive drawing, and you think that I'm decent at explaining things, then this one is going to be for you. I'm pretty pumped about it. Also, just because it's something like, well, I explained it in the video, but the reason I'm doing it is that I knew when I was younger that Bridgman had a lot to say and that Bridgman was really, really useful. But I had no idea how to like penetrate it because I didn't know like the language of drawing. Like I was starting at 0, and Bridgman kind of starts at 60. You know what I mean? So I couldn't like kind of get into it. So this is gonna be like Bridgman, you know, Bridgman for Dummies, right? Like, you know, that book series. This is gonna be like Bridgman for beginners is what I'm referring to it as. So if that sounds interesting, you keep your eyes peeled for updates about that. Let's see. Wait a minute. It looks like the stream is frozen for some reason. All right, no, the stream is not frozen. Everything seems fine. All right. Hang on. Here we go. Abolengiro says YouTube versus Twitch. I don't have like a lot of Twitch experience, so unfortunately I can't really say. But I'll say this: I do have a Twitch account, and I'm aware that Twitch is a good streaming platform. If you feel like Twitch is a fit for you, I get the sense that it's also a good kind of platform for long form content. However, right, you got to think about who your subscriber base is, and I think there's just more people on YouTube than there are on Twitch. Now that's a double-edged sword, right? It can be kind of a blue ocean type of thing where you can bring something to Twitch that nobody's really doing, so you're the big fish in the small pond, or you can say like everybody wants to watch drawing videos is on YouTube already, so let me get it into that stream, right? So it's really just up to you. Let's see. Gilgamesh is asking what happened to episode 29, why figure drawing matters. That is in the beginning of this stream. I mentioned it, but it's coming back. It's just not there yet. Finn says, "Yo, B-Man, have you ever met Paul Ingebrigtsen of the Boston School? Would you consider site size to be a crutch? In other words, if it's the only tool you have, would you consider it limiting?" And sorry for lots of questions. No, I think I've not met Paul Ingebrigtsen of the Boston School, but Boston's a cool town. And would I consider it? No, I mean, I don't. Again, like, you can get away, and people do, with only ever learning site size. Like, there's people out there that are really good artists that all they ever learned was site size. I've seen it happen. Like, I know that. Depending on who you listen to, it sounds like it would be impossible, but the reality is, like, it can be like a really useful system for nailing down your proportions. So there's nothing wrong with it. Again, it depends on what you want to do. If you want to draw the way that I want to draw, it's not going to be enough. So you're going to need to supplement it with something else. It's just though, like, again, I mean, it's so situational. If you're never going to find yourself in a situation where you need to do something outside of what site size will allow you to do, then you're good to go. If you want to do stuff that's outside the purview of what site size is most effective in, then guess what? You're going to need, like, to kind of expand your knowledge base and your skill set. So I think for me anyway, like, I'm just somebody, I always want to, like, learn some new thing. I mean, I'm kind of addicted to learning stuff as much as I am to kind of making stuff. So even if site size was enough in general, like, I'd still want to do other stuff. Like, I wouldn't stop there. I'd always need to do, like, that little bit extra, that other thing that seems interesting, and that's kind of kept me going over the years. Is how stuff, doesn't get old to me. Let's see. And Finn is asking another question. He says, how do you consider where to place the outlines or power lines that frame the forms without them looking like occlusion shadows? Feel like that's a question that requires probably more of an explanation than what I have here. Yeah, that's. I apologize. I gotta skip over that one. It's a little bit maybe too complex. Daniel Morris is asking, what do you think about doing a traditional underpainting with a brown or gray grisaille versus doing a completely color underpainting? Some say that a color one is not muddily affected by underlayers. Hey man, this is what gets me is that when people frame advice, they often choose to frame it by, like, what it isn't or what the alternative would suggest. So doing a a grisaille underpainting is not a denial of doing a color underpainting. It's just another way to do it. And doing a color painting is not a denial. A color underpainting is not a denial of doing a grisaille. Like, the good reasons to do a color underpainting are not because they avoid what's in a grisaille. You can have muddy colors in a color underpainting. It happens all the time. And you can have fresh colors over the top of a grisaille painting. So, though I appreciate the question, the premise of the question I kind of don't totally like agree with, um, because yeah, like each one is possible to have positive outcomes with either of those. So you can find that you have an affinity for one or the other, or you like the effects of one or the other. Some people will say, actually, and this is something I got from Charles Weed when I was in Denmark and talking to him about his work. But he'll say that he actually likes to do something that you found more in like icon painting, where you'd have like a verdii, like a green underpainting that you would then like glaze and scumble warm temperatures on top of. So intentionally painting a lower layer of the painting in a hue, or sorry, in a got caught in my words. You would intentionally paint the lower layer of the painting in a hue that was the opposite of what you knew your colors in the end were going to be, so that they would like kind of push each other in opposite directions from a color perspective. So again, man, it's not one size fits all. There's not like one ring to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. It's a multiplistic universe of many different paths to get to the same place. Let's see. Dr. Lecture says, Bridgman as pay-for-view portrait training for new dummies, I'm in. Yeah, exactly. So it's basically, like I said, kind of trying to bring Bridgman to the masses. Whereas, and there's some books I feel this way about, like, when I first started looking into Richer and his artistic anatomy, I knew it was good, but I really needed a tour guide to kind of, show me the what and the why and the how of Richer. It's just natural. Like, there's a lot of privileged information by someone who has learned an incredible amount, and so it requires some unpacking if you don't yet have that skill set or that knowledge base implanted. So this is me trying to bring, in particular, Bridgman's portraiture work, right, to people who I think can really use it, because it should be a part of what you learn early on. Like, for me, it was something I had to learn much later on. For instance, like all the things that he does with perspective related to portraiture is something that I had to come across way later in my education. And it's not that, again, that I couldn't have learned stuff without it. It's just, it's one more thing to make you that much more well-rounded, to be that much more in control of what you're trying to do. Let's see. Spark says, what types of paper do you recommend for high-quality finished graphite drawing? Stonehenge from Legion Paper. That's my go-to. Finn says, thanks for the good answers. Site size, great stream as always. No worries. David Luiz, who has the name of a very famous football player, formerly of Chelsea and PSG fame, says, Stephen, who is the best number one favorite artist? Love your work. Sorry for the bad English. Who's the best? Who's the best? Are we talking all time? Are we talking historical? These things, like in baseball, or I was just talking about football, right? So if you're talking about football and you're of a certain age, you're going to say Pele, right? He was the man. He was the football player for whom everybody looked to as like the greatest in the world, the greatest to have ever played the game. You look to a younger generation, and they're going to say to you Lionel Messi, or they're going to say to you Cristiano Ronaldo, because that's who we're like familiar with, or they are familiar with. That's their milieu. So like in that sense, I would have to, I'm speaking about this from like my era and my my position in the world. Now, I think if you ask this question to a lot of artists, say 50 years ago, I think that you're going to get a lot of Renaissance answers because we were in a place 50 years ago where people in the West needed to rediscover realism. And I think they looked a little bit further back into history to find things that they thought were most sensible or analogous to their values. Whereas I think you ask a lot of people nowadays, your answer is going to be a lot more 19th century. And I've heard the arguments for looking further back, and it was that all great artists from the 19th century were looking back at the Baroque for their inspiration. They were looking to Caravaggio, they were looking to Titian, they were looking to artists of this previous era and what they had done that made their work great. And so the argument would follow, that's where we should look to the Baroque. However, it takes for granted that all artists of all eras need to look back to the same era to get an inspiration to find greatness. But it's nonsensical to me, right? Like, I think that it's probably a sliding scale, if anything. So to me, I look to artists of the 19th century. As far as having a favorite, I don't know. I'm not sure if I have the time really to have a favorite nowadays, which maybe sounds weird, but I think the reality is, I was talking to a good friend of mine about this. Like, this is like, let's get real for a second, right? So, a good friend of mine, Steve Forster, lives in New York, and when we lived there, we hang out with him a lot, and I've known him for many, many years. But he was talking about he had gone to this exhibition, right? Like, he's a dad, he's got a couple kids, runs a school, teaches at another school, he does all this stuff. Really busy guy. And he said he was like really excited. So he took the time off to like go to this exhibition of this contemporary artist that he likes, whatever gallery it was in the city. And he goes to the gallery and he's like seeing the work, and he's like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. But it kind of dawns on him, like, at a certain point, you just get to this age and you get to a certain place in your career where you just want to see stuff done the way that you wanted to do it. So like all the going out incessantly to all the shows and all the museums and stuff, sometimes it's just too much. Sometimes you just need to be in your studio focused on making the stuff look the way you wanted it to look, doing it the way you wanted it to be done, and forget about the your favorites or this or that or whatever. Like, those are interesting touchstones and interesting moments, but I do get that feeling sometimes that like I don't have time to have like a favorite to kind of relate my work to. It's like there's too much to kind of get done to hover around Solomon J. Solomon or Michelangelo or whoever. It's just, this sounds so rude. I don't mean it rude, but I just sometimes I just don't care. I'm just involved in the making of something. But that's like, I'm a really emotional person, so like I kind of ebb and flow. And you could ask me another day after I just looked at a book of XYZ artwork and I'd go like, oh, it's that artist for sure. So today it's nobody. Let's see. Miguel Carrasco is asking what I think of Nicola Samori's work. Yeah, it's really good. Mark Arte is saying, hi, Stephen, you are a great artist, question mark. Can we have the photo reference? I don't know if I'm a great artist, but I draw a lot. The photo reference, by the way, for this is it's all on my Patreon page. Folks, I cannot tell you enough that you can spend $10 and get more tutorials than you could do in a year. So go to my Patreon page. If all you wanted was model packs, if all you wanted was model images, you can go there, subscribe at the $10 tier, go to the model packs post, and just download all the model packs. I don't know what to tell you, people. It's all there. Go for it. Hardik Drew is asking, do you use Taklon hair brushes? I think you're referring right to the brushes that are made by, is it Trekell that does the Taklon brushes? I have used them in the past. Yeah, do I use them? Sometimes I use them, sometimes not. They're not obviously on my favorites list. Kind of my current favorite is those Utrecht Manglon brushes. They're a synthetic bristle, but super springy, super soft. Really, really nice brushes. So those are the ones that I've been using lately, and really, really loving, especially for like alla prima work and stuff. Um, but again, like also like with all this stuff, there is an FAQ post on my Patreon that'll tell you literally like all the stuff that I use and all the stuff I think about the stuff that you can use. So if you wanted to deep dive on that, for sure the information is there. Let's see what else is going on. Miguel Carrasco is saying, "Love your rendering technique, so smooth. Any recommendation to improve visual accuracy?" Biggest thing you can do to improve visual accuracy is this: move back, assess your drawing from a distance, right? Compare back and forth. And can you still see me, by the way? I don't know if I like jumped off the stream. Now here I am, right? So move back from your drawing, right? Assess it from a distance. Squint down and assess it from a distance. And what's going to happen is you're going to get a dramatically different perspective on what you're seeing than what you have when you're like close up. Like I'm looking at values on the temple on the right hand side of the cast, and I'm going like, yeah, maybe there's a little bit over modeling there. I need to remove some of the graphite from that area. You know, it's too dramatic. I'm looking at areas on the left hand side and going, they are way underglazed. I need like twice the amount of value on some of the values on the left hand side of the cast to really get like a true read out of it. So if you want to improve your visual accuracy, right, step back, step way back, and get a sense of what the kind of big perspective of your work actually is. Oh no, Alan Breno is saying the link to Patreon is not working. All right, listen, I'm going to check that as soon as this is over. But hey, it's patreon.com/Stephen Bauman Artwork. If you just Google Stephen Bauman and Patreon, you're going to wind up in the right place. So I'm really sorry that link isn't working, which just goes to show there's so many ways to mess up a podcast. Or sorry, there was like somebody spamming the comments. But it's so easy to mess up a live stream is what I meant to say. Let me see. I got to... all right. So I had to like prune the comments a little bit. Somebody was like spamming them. Marco Fontolan says, have you ever thought about creating your own Rosemary & Co. set of brushes? I haven't. I like Rosemary's brushes in general. Yeah, well, that's a fair question. I'll say, well, the perfectly honest answer to it is I haven't actually thought about doing so, but I know that it's a thing, so maybe it is something I should explore. I guess what probably would stop me would just be that I don't. There's like other brush brands that I use that are really integral to what I do. Even though, by the way, Rosemary, some of her brushes are exactly brushes that I recommend, like her combers, which are these like really, really soft bristle brushes that really are great for just like tickling the surface of the painting, kind of getting really like soft effects that I don't think like there's any other brush that I've ever seen out there that does exactly the job that this brush is trying to do. Let's see. Hintze says, I just started my education on Atelier Academy. Do you have any advice you wished you had when you started? Yes, there is so much advice I wish I had when I started. There are, how many hours do we have left to live stream in terms of, you know, the advice that I wish I had? One, the day that you walk into that atelier, right? Or even for that matter, for you studying online, the day that you get on Discord, the day that you start commenting on other professionals' Instagram accounts, the day that you start interacting with people in the arts community, that is the beginning of your career. And you should treat those interactions accordingly. You got to respect that these people in this community are your colleagues, right? And you're building relationships with them. And you want to build that on a foundation of like mutual respect. It can be admiration, but the baseline is mutual respect. So when you walk into that studio, you know, whatever school it is, understand out of the 30 people that are starting out that course that year, however many of them go on to be like proper professionals, those are still going to be the people that you're working with in 10 years time, in 20 years time as well. There's people that the day that I walked into the academy, still I interact with them on a professional level. So just be really mindful of the people that you're working with, because you're all going to be struggling. You're all going to be like working through some problems as students and having really, really mind-meltingly frustrating times, trying to get really, really good at this thing that you're trying to do. But just remember to try and be like humane as well. Like, be a person and be a good student also. Don't try to like put blinders on and like ignore everybody around you or whatever. It's a community thing. Another thing that I would say is that starting out this learning, the primary problem is that you don't know what you don't know. And so you're going to get advices from instructors that genuinely, like when you listen to them, don't make sense because you don't know why they make sense, right? And so you can you can choose your own adventure. You can listen to an advice that doesn't quite make sense to you and go like, oh, that sounds like nonsense. Or you can listen to it and go like, wait a minute, how would that make sense? What ideas can I connect that to that can make it make sense, that can help it make sense? Because the reality is, the people that you're studying with, they've been there and done that. And they're giving you this advice, not because it's like some random thing. And maybe, by the way, maybe everybody knows this and I'm literally the only person that needed this advice, but I needed this advice. So I'm kind of repeating it to you. Just search for how the ideas can make sense, how the advice can be good. And it will benefit you so much more every time than thinking of it critically and going like, oh, this doesn't make any sense or whatever, or that seems like nonsense to me, or that doesn't jive with what I think about drawing. Which, I know I'm saying this, I bet all of you listening are thinking like, who would do that? Like, who would walk into an atelier and do that? So many people, because I think drawing is or learning to draw is it's like a very vulnerable experience, that I think we put up a lot of defenses about it, There was somebody the other day, this happened to me, like real stories on Instagram, right? So I posted this drawing that was, it was from a live stream actually, about like learning to draw and stuff. And I posted this drawing that was from, what was it, 2000 and, I don't know, no, it's from 1999, when I was first in college. And then I posted another one from 2018. Just, like I get a lot of people asking me like, what were your early drawings like? And they sucked. And so I posted this to show like the little bit the before after. And someone in the comments says, oh, I like the older one because the new one looks rendered to death. Like you just rendered it to death. And, listen, I'm not new to like comments and trolling or whatever, but I just heard this and I was like, what is this motivation? Because it literally makes no sense. Like, why would you comment on someone's post about their work and go like, your work now looks rendered to death. The work that you did before you knew how to draw, that was way better. Like, what's the motivation there? Like, how does this person come to this conclusion? Even if you think it, that it's like a even remotely useful thing to say to anybody. anyway. So I was talking to my wife about this, and she was like, "Oh, it sounds like a defense thing, And I thought, yeah, of course. Like, I can remember, like, really early on in my drawing education, like, I would look at really refined work and I go like, oh, all that is like it's just refined or whatever, It's not really like gutsy. And I can remember like thinking that you're like looking at Bouguereau and like going, oh, it's just rendering, And it was that same kind of defensiveness because I couldn't, like, I couldn't render stuff. That I looked at stuff that was being rendered in order to defend myself a little bit. I would go like, rendering, who cares about rendering? And then it all kind of like made a little bit of sense to me. Like, I kind of thought about it in retrospect, and I thought, yeah, probably that's the case. Like this person is probably just, looking at the drawing and on a subconscious level is, looking at their own skills, and they're like, maybe not where they want to be exactly, but they want to feel good also. It's a kind of defense mechanism that we have, like, in order to kind of keep ourselves feeling okay, we might kind of try to attack a little bit, something else out there, and again, it's really like not so much about feelings for me, but I just couldn't even grasp like where is this guy coming from? I don't get it. Anyway, whatever. Poor me. Yeah. On to the next question. Um, let's see. Yeah, okay, okay. Yeah, Finn is correcting. The link is incomplete. The link to my Patreon in the description ends with Stephen Bauman, not Stephen Bauman Artwork. So patreon.com/Stephen Bauman Artwork is where you actually want to be if you want to get to my Patreon. I'll fix it at the end of the stream, by the way. Let's see. Or actually, by the way, if somebody would just actually write the correct link in the comments section, then that would be super awesome. Just comment on the video, not in the chat here, but in the comments. Thank you. I don't know if anybody will do it, but thank you. Gilgamesh says, big congrats. You have a big enough audience for bots to target your stream. Yeah, like somebody was like spamming the comments in the stream, from one of these like webcam things or whatever. So that's, yeah, you hit 30K and then people will try to spam you. It's great. Hardik Drew says, how have you celebrated your anniversary? My wife and I just celebrated a 10-year anniversary. I'm the luckiest guy on the face of planet Earth, and we just took 2 days completely off, which probably doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're an artist and a teacher, and you're like running essentially, right, we're kind of like, I'm running my own school. So you have like all the admin that goes along with that. You rarely really take time to totally shut off. And that's one of the prices that you pay for that freedom that you have is that you're a little bit more on call than maybe you were when you were like just an artist. But it's something we love doing and we're always going to continue to do it. So we kind of make peace with that. But for the anniversary, we took that day and just did our own thing, and we liked it so much that we just took the next day and did our own thing as well. Which involved, by the way, right up the road from where we live, there are these Viking graves, right? These giant like mounds that eventually were excavated, and the contents of which were put into the Viking Museum, which is nearby. But there's this whole park of these like massive like Viking grave mounds. So we did a nice long bike ride up to that. Yeah, an exhausting, frankly, bike ride all the way up there. Let's see. Gilgamesh says, in the future, we will be happy to say, I was there when we only were 100 watching. Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Marco Fontalan says, what do you think about the new Lime Academy? Gangbusters. The new Lime Academy, featuring such teachers as Amaya Gurpide and Edmund Rochat and Hollis Dunlap and Jordan Sokol, is going to be, or actually is already, I think, it's running. It's a great school, full of great people and really good teachers. And I think if you're actually looking for like where to go, a lot of people ask me, would you go to GCA? Would you go to FAA? I'd probably go to Lime if I had to choose nowadays, just because I feel like, well, one, like I know really, really well all of the teachers that are teaching there, and I kind of know where they're coming from, and without exception, they're great. And also, I think that at the moment, at least, they're not stuck in that, like, which one are we dichotomy, GCA is kind of, for better and worse, has planted its flag in form. FAA likes that flat design. I don't think that at Lime, I don't think that they're stuck in one camp or the other. Which, by the way, that sounds so harsh, like these other schools are stuck, whatever. I think that they're a little bit more fluid, probably, in the way that they can present their curriculum, which I think is only an asset when you know who's in charge of that curriculum. So, Lime Academy. MJ is asking thoughts on Stoicism. The less said, the better. Let's see. Rumen Plamenov says, when is the Leo Messi painting coming out? Hey man, I've got a couple of commissions that I gotta get done. But the Leo Messi painting is not far off. I listen. For those of you that don't care, I get it, but please indulge me for 5 seconds. When Leo left Barcelona, I'm still like torn because I loved all the moments that Messi gave us watching Barcelona. And I think, listen, he's a great example. He's a great guy. He's going to go down as like one of the best players to ever step on a football pitch. Um, but like watching him play for PSG is nowhere near the same. So it feels a little bit weird. I don't know. It feels a little bit weird right now. I have more conflicted, messy feelings than I have, than I had when he was with Barcelona, and it was easy to know how I felt about Leo. He was the best. He was the greatest. So it might, I might have to defer my Leo Messi painting until he retires. Let's see. Miguel Carrasco is saying, what do you think is more useful, achieving a great visual accuracy or achieving a more structural approach? Um, hmm. I mean, different practitioners will give you a different answer, but I'm a practitioner, so I'll give you my answer. I believe in the structural because I believe in poetry. I believe in interpretation. I believe in, you know, a human being taking something in and then filtering it through themselves and through their taste and then bringing to you the things that matter to them. That's what matters to me to kind of see in an artwork. And so always I'm going to go onto the side of artists who are um, I think in this dichotomy, structural versus like hyper real, always the structural, only because I see more humanity in it and I want to see the humanity. That's my feeling. Um, if you want a humanity-less art form, then hyperrealism is probably for you. I mean, listen, there's a human being behind the brush always. But my understanding with like kind of hyperrealism and photorealism and things is really that we're doing our best to, in a way, be like kind of inhuman, right? Or to be more precise than a human is or should be in a way. Um, if you want to clarify that to me, if I'm missing something or whatever, for sure let me know. But that's where I'm at with it. Let's see. A lot of congrats on the 10th anniversary. Thank you, folks. Miguel is following up. Sometimes I think that if you focus a lot on structure, you can lose some proportion. I don't know if this makes sense for you. Here's the thing: if you focus on anything, you know, it can come at the detriment, as a detriment to other things, for sure. Like that can happen. Um, you want to, I mean, this is my philosophy is always that these things need to work in conjunction with each other, that you need a sense of harmony in the way that things kind of flow together. And so all these things, in proportion, honestly, is so high on the list of important things. Without proportion, I think that we lose some sense of the innate identity of the subject. And without that, how are we really connecting with and conveying how we experience that subject? Proportion is so important to me because of that. Remy Kalevi says, you are one of those people who make me realize that I'm not very good at drawing. Hey, it's all about stages, people. It's all about stages. We're just what we are at the moment. Let's see. Alan Breno says, are you familiar with Roberto Ferri's work? What do you think about it? Is it Ferri or is it Ferrari? Roberto Ferrari. If it's who I think you're talking about, I think he's amazing. I mean, come on. Like, maybe it is Ferri. Maybe I'm just remembering it wrong. But no, he's great. He's yeah, like he's today's Caravaggio. He's wonderful. Nothing but amazing things to say about his work. He manages to take something that, quite honestly, I think a lot of people, in the art world would find it maybe easy to write him off, but I think he completely, his work cancels out that possibility. It's wonderful. It's an absolute dream. Great work. Let's see. It's something like Miguel is following up again. It's something like Barg versus Russian academic drawing, which I think is more structural and more realist. Yeah, no, I mean, but I find value on either side of that too. Emmanuel is saying, I thought you weren't the type to do commissions. What changed your mind? I do. I always have done commissions. It just, as time has gone on, it's more selective. So usually what happens is that we'll have a conversation about like what the project is. And if the project sounds like it's kind of cool and interesting, then like I think that's really interesting. And I mean, I am a portrait artist, so there's no reason not to do it. But it's like I'm lucky enough and very fortunate enough to be in a position in my career where um, I can take very much the commission on my terms. Which, by the way, it's not even really about my terms. It's that the person commissioning really likes the artwork that I make and really likes the vision that I have. And so they're commissioning me not to do their work, they're commissioning me to do my work, which is a very dramatically different situation. And for those of you like starting out, you're going to come across this a lot. Some people would really like to use you as their hands. They see that you can paint and they would like a painting, but they want you to make the painting in their mind. And there are other people who see the work that you make and they love your work and they want to see your work applied to their vision, right? And it's a dramatically different situation, like I said. So the one I'm working on now, for instance, it's a woman who contacted me. She has two fantastic kids, and what she wants to do actually is to over the next, I think 10 years, to periodically have like portraits made of them, a drawing and then another drawing and then I think eventually an oil painting and another drawing. So I'll be like working with these kids as they grow up like over 10 years, which I just thought like, yeah, why? I mean, sign me up. Why would I not want to do that project? It sounds amazing. So I'll be starting that out coming up pretty soon. I mean, frankly, as soon as I get some of this stuff wrapped up, I'll be diving into that project. So yeah, I mean that's why I kind of am doing this commission. It's because I think it's a commission of the right type. And you may do some critiques early on, or not critiques, but commissions early on in your career that are of the former category. But if you're able to find a place to be patient, and I know that's difficult, I think you should try to start the conversation with the person who wants to commission you by kind of setting some boundaries, by saying like, hey, you came to me because you found my work or whatever, you've seen what I do. If you want a commission from me, then you want a painting that looks like my paintings, or you want a drawing that looks like my drawings. That's what it's going to look like. It's not going to be a copy of a photograph that you send me. It's going to be a drawing that's like the drawings that I make. And most people, I think you'll find, are going to be amenable to that. Like people actually, I think in some ways, how to put this? They are very happy to have you help them understand what they're looking for when they commission you. You just have to be confident enough to lead that conversation. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, Art A is saying, I never thought I would see Leo leave Barcelona. It's complicated, isn't it? Leo Messi leaving Barcelona under the very weird circumstances in which he did. It's tough. That's a tough one. Link is saying, what do you think about Norway? Do you miss the USA? Do I miss the USA? I mean, I've not been a person that misses places a lot. I'm kind of, wherever I am, I'm usually pretty busy. And so I just want to like do things. I just want to do things where I am. And so yeah, no, I haven't had a lot of time to like really miss the USA. And I think that, coming to Norway for me was always a priority for us. It was always something that we wanted to do. So, I mean, I was looking forward to it so much that yeah, like it was only excitement to have finally arrived. Um, what I think of Norway is that in general, hmm, what do I think about Norway in general? I mean, I don't want to like paint too broad a brush and say, oh, it's this way or it's that way. But I think in general, like I find Norwegians to be people that are like kind of pretty in touch. Like they're like pretty kind of real, pretty normal. And I kind of like that a lot about them. So for me, Norway has been really great in that respect. There's some little conveniences that I miss. Like it's a little bit harder when I need new camera gear or something. It's a little bit harder to get that here. But you roll with the punches. Let's see. Danny Chen says, "What is the right relationship with reference photo? I find a reference photo and I change this or that when I draw it. I always feel like it's not so original and like I'm a fraud." Yeah, maybe you're talking about a little bit about kind of imposter syndrome, which I think affects a lot of artists because the nature of what we do is so kind of unregulated that yeah, you can always feel like, oh, there's somebody way better than you, or there's something missing from your work, or there's some problem that you can't see. It just kind of depends a little bit on your mentality. So, and I've talked about this before, but I don't find that those are things that eventually like ever really went away. Like I never stopped feeling like a little bit of a fraud. It's just that you have less time and energy to like spend on that as you kind of mature a bit. So I think just give it some time, focus on the stuff that you do enjoy, focus on the positive feelings that you have. And at least in this case, I don't think the negative feelings that you're having are particularly constructive. I don't think that they're really helping you. So for me, I'm not saying like smash it all down and don't feel it. Feel it, but move past it. Like it's just a thing that we all feel. Just focus on you and your work. Let's see. Rumen Plamenov says, "Do you believe artists from the past who depicted the human figure in a completely different way saw the world differently? For example, the Egyptians or early Christian art." This is the kind of cool thing, and I think the closest thing that you could say about, finding a parallel to that, right, is to look at work like pre-photograph and post-photograph. Composition changed almost completely, right? In the era that spans, the invention of photography. So did people pre-photograph, in a sense, look at and understand the world in a different way? Yeah, totally a different way. So that manifested a massive kind of change. So would early Christians, I mean, you would have to, or Egyptians, you'd have to look at like what was the representational form in that moment, and the understanding of other technologies as well. Like for instance, I'm not sure if there's any correlation or alignment here, but at what point was the whatever the tool or the concept, a perspective introduced? Like was it ever actually introduced in Egyptian art, right? Because when you look at the flatness of the representation, of course it's almost completely lacking that sense of perspective. Now, perspective in a way, I'm not sure if exactly you would call it this, but I mean it's a kind of technology similar to that of the photograph in that it altered completely the way that we understood like two-dimensional representation. So do I think they saw the world a different way, or did they have different tools to represent the world that they saw? I don't know. The answer is probably somewhere inside of that. But really cool question. John McEntee is asking if I ever met Odd Nerdrum. I have met Odd Nerdrum, and maybe one day I'll tell that story. But yeah, suffice to say, it was very belittling, and it was not someone I'd probably care to meet again. But that's just my experience. Alan Breno says, "How do we know when to stop? How do we know when a drawing is finished? Sometimes I don't know when I'm overworking in a drawing or underworking." Well, if you're a student, then a good thing to do is ask your instructor. I mean, when I was studying, that was it. Like you had to ask your instructor to pass you when they passed you or finish when you were finished. Nowadays, I look a lot more to myself, you know, like I understand and accept that I do not have perpetual momentum, right? That at a certain point, I am done with a piece. I can't think of anything interesting to do to make it better or to improve it. And that's usually when I understand, or that has a strong correlative value to me understanding like when a piece is kind of done. So you just need to ask yourself, you know, like what do you think you still need to do, and how do you intend to manifest those things that you need to do? If you have the capacity to do it, then I would say do it. But a lot of times, I think what can happen is that you're just working around in circles, right? And you're not really sure of what you should be doing, so you're just doing something. And I think that's when we get into that realm of like overworked. It's really like more that when you're working, that it lacks a purpose. It's not that you're making it better and that's overworking it. I think that if you're working and you're improving something, that's not overworking. It's the kind of slightly aimless work that can ruin a drawing. Let's see. MJ is asking differences between working on Stonehenge and Canson. There's some difference. Canson's a little bit more meaty than Stonehenge is. Let's see. All right, folks. We've done a couple hours. I think I was compensating. I did like a mega stream because last week I missed the stream. But thank you so much for watching this one. I'm almost done with this drawing. And on November 1st, I'm going to do the whole rendering section of this lesson. It's going to be on Patreon, November 1st. Stay tuned there. If you're interested in any of this stuff, it's patreon.com/Stephen Bauman Artwork. There will be a fixed link that is down in the description of this video. Yada yada. Please like and subscribe. You know, all that YouTube stuff. And thank you for being here. I'm going to leave the camera now, actually, because I have to go to my computer and turn off the stream. But thank you, everybody, for showing up and hanging out with me. I'll talk to you next time.